normally take me maybe 6 or 7 hours to describe our distinguished guest.
I'm glad you asked me that. About how long to do the introduction. Thank you, Dr. Reddy.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
I'd like to make it simple. Honorable Congressman Ed Royce is not only a friend, he's our captain and a rabbi, and a distinguished leader in the country, representing the entire country and entirely representing the international community as the chair of Foreign Affairs Committee, the most powerful committee in the US Congress. Congressman Ed Royce has worked with the India Caucus when there were only 4 members. Now then it went to 8 members, now it's almost 200. And thanks to your kind leadership for being the chair of the India Caucus on many occasions. Congressman is one of the highest awardee of the President of India. He has toured India many times and he has taken up a major task on international relations, building great relations between India and the United States. He's been to Gujarat after the earthquake, and he took a delegation. He supported Gujarat, which is our sister state of California, and we truly appreciate for all his help during the greatest earthquake that Gujarat had. And on the issue of terrorism and the issue of non-proliferation and the issue of international relations, Congressman Ed Royce has done a tremendous help to India, the world's largest democracy, and the United States. We are very honored, we are very indebted to you, sir, for your kindness supporting India and Indian issues. The nuclear proliferation issues, Congressman has handled that very beautifully, and the India-US nuclear treaty was one of the most critical treaties that came in US Congress, and it was approved with the help of Congressman Ed Royce. It was one of the greatest achievements to put the light at the end of the tunnel in India, where they need a lot of electricity and a lot of growth, especially economic enlargement. And Congressman Ed Royce has been a key person to have Modi ji to come here to address the Congress. We are very thankful to you, sir, in that regard. And ladies and gentlemen, it's my honor to introduce Congressman Ed Royce.
Dr. Reddy, ladies and gentlemen, my friends, it's good to be with you, and especially good to be with you here today in such a lovely home. And I think I'll walk off the stage here and get a little closer into the crowd. I felt like maybe we were in a theater in the round here, almost Shakespearean in terms of the way you set this up, Dr. Reddy. I wanted to thank Dr. Reddy at the outset, because when I joined the India Caucus, I think we had all of 8 members at the time. Somebody told me there was a dozen, but over the years, obviously, we were able to build that up. And your trips and the organizational effort you put in to help build the India Caucus, I really appreciate it. Because on the ground, I was doing a lot of work for members, but he would do an event every year, as you know. And that event would bring members of Congress out, and they'd learn more and more and more about the India Caucus. But importantly, we were also sharing with them why we needed to adjust and move our relationship and base it on common values. And one of those values was outreach to the democratic state of India and their outreach to us, because things were changing. And it did not make sense to double down on autocratic regimes when we had the common values that are in the Indian Constitution and in our Constitution. And that is what got me engaged originally in the India Caucus. And in terms of legislation, my first bill, as I recall, or the first one that had great impact, I had taken a position in the Foreign Affairs Committee of explaining that the transfer of ring magnets from Beijing to Pakistan was going to end up giving Pakistan the ability to develop nuclear weapons. And that at the point in time when the Clinton administration then put sanctions on India, they were sanctioning the wrong party. India was moving forward because at this point, both Pakistan and India were developing a nuclear program. Why? Because of the actions of Beijing. And I said, if you're going to put sanctions on Beijing for proliferating from Beijing to Pakistan. That's where the sanctions should have been, but not on India. And so I had legislation to lift those sanctions. And yes, back then I had quite a dialogue as we were originally building up the India caucus to a large membership. When I was chairman, and I've been chairman I think 3 times of the India caucus over those years for 2-year periods as we built it and built it and built it until finally we had over 160 members, 180 members of the India caucus. Now this was a sea change, but it was also an opportunity to explain to the members of the House. And whereas we used to have amendments on the floor of the House, which Congressman Burton would offer, we got to the point where he couldn't get a second for the amendment. We got to a point where the members understood that the problem here needed to be focused on the proliferation effort that was going on with respect to what Beijing had done with the transfer of those ring magnets. When that set in among the members, and when they began to contemplate why it was that this relationship, as you eloquently have said, should be based on common values, Dr. Reddy, the common values that we have with India, that India was in a tough neighborhood and needed to strengthen and deepen its relationship. That's when we began to make headway with our themes. And so I was the lead Republican that went with President Clinton on his historic trip to India. And as you know, we were able to move the Clinton administration considerably in terms of their attitude on this issue. And it led to a breakthrough, I would say, in terms of our engagement in the region over time. But not as much as I would like or as we need. Because at the end of the day, India and the United States share a common value. And yet, trade with India, although we've built it up, although we've increased it by 60% with this engagement, it's still $93 billion a year. Our trade with Beijing is $570 billion. My goal over the next years is the same goal as the Prime Minister of India's. It's to see this increase by more than 5-fold so that we are trading with our strategic partner. We are trading and building the economies based on these common values. And that is part of our effort with respect to engagement on trade issues. And this is another initiative that I've been involved with. But Dr. Reddy made mention of the Indian Nuclear Framework Agreement. Another issue, I managed that issue on the House floor. And at that time, I think the reason I was managing that issue was because a lot of people didn't think it was going to pass. At that time, and I have fairly good relationships, as many of you know, with members on both sides of the aisle. But I made an eloquent, I thought, argument on the House floor against certain poison pills which would have brought down that agreement. And one of those was by the chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee, or former chairman, Tom Lantos. May have been the ranking member at the time. We only overcome those amendments by a few votes, but by enough to carry the day, by enough to get the civilian nuclear energy agreement through. And that was of critical importance in terms of energy for India. Over the years, I had the opportunity, as many of you know, to attend the International Fleet Review, to support cooperation, defense cooperation between India and the United States, to support intelligence cooperation, to move many initiatives, to go to Gujarat the day after the quake. I flew in and I saw the Chief Minister Modi, and I saw him there at the site. As I went from Bhuj and went through the cities that were devastated, he was the one I saw bringing order out of the chaos around. And this would have been incomprehensible to me to look back years later after the devastation that I saw and to watch the growth rate year after year after year in Gujarat State. And I remember saying to my staff members at the time, this is someone who could lead India. And I remember making the argument to the Speaker of the House, who told me, no, we're not going to have any more, this has already been done, we're not going to have any more addresses to the House of Representatives. I had first extended an invitation to the Prime Minister during his campaign for Prime Minister, to come to the United States. And that was blocked by the administration. I later extended it again. And when it was accepted, had to do some quick talking with the Speaker of the House about the importance of this address. And I must say, of the experiences I've had, that was intense. It was a rewarding moment for many of you who watched it. And afterwards, also televised to India, was his speech to the Foreign Affairs Committee. And I introduced it before the Foreign Affairs Committee.
Yes.
Yeah, GJ remembers that speech. It was a pretty good introduction too, GJ. And I want to thank GJ because both of his children worked as interns in my office. And I appreciate very much their good work. But most of all, I appreciate your daughter getting us together backstage with the Prime Minister in San Francisco, or in Palo Alto. Thank you again. That was a great experience. I've had opportunities over the years a number of times in my trips to India to meet with him, to talk with him. And the reason we're talking today about the potential for India to overtake China economically, if we can get this engagement with our ally that builds its foundation on the rule of law with India, that has the common vision. The reason we're talking about it is because of the leadership he and others are bringing. And we have to continue to build upon this. And part of our engagement strategy, including on trade, is to see how we can further advance our mutual cooperation, further liberalize trade between India and the United States. So this is one of our important responsibilities. But another issue we've been working on ever since our early meetings with Ambassador Kausick and others, if you will recall, Dr.Reddy, and this goes back many, many years, was the concept that we should have cooperation on counterterrorism between Delhi, Washington, and Moscow with respect to what we were going to do about radicalization, about jihadist activity throughout the region, something that we've worked on for many, many years together, and something that continues to be a great challenge moving forward. And in terms of the attack on Mumbai, I went over right after the attack, spent time meeting with senior Indian officials